Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. On each episode, we interview recovering addicts and learn their story with addiction. Through exploring personal journeys, we get a glimpse of the depths addicts fall to and their path in recovery. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. My name's Kevin, and I am an addict.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, we do it just like meetings. So with me is our co-host.
My name's Josh. I'm an addict.
And he's yawning over there in the mic.
Yeah.
And then our special friend today is...
I'm Rob, and I'm an addict.
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good.
Did you say you're feeling a tiny bit nervous?
Tiny.
Yeah? Because we're going to talk about stuff that, like, might dig deep and you don't necessarily feel comfortable all the time about it?
Well, I never feel fully comfortable about it.
True.
So, yeah, it's just a little, I know what's there. So, you know.
Cool.
It's been carried around for a long time.
All right. Well, a little housekeeping before we get started here. Just so you guys know that we have on every episode, if you drill down into the episode, whatever platform that you use to listen, you can find a comment button. And it'll send us a text or an email. Tell us what you think of the show. And you can support the show by the subscribe or donate button. You can donate, I think the lowest is $3. You can sign up to send that every month if you want to. And also, if you are interested, if you are interested in sponsoring the show, please contact us. There's an email on the website, thefourthstep.com, and it's the fourth is spelled out. Also, we have friends that you can check out if you're into other recovery podcasts. There's the Anonymous podcast and the Living Clean podcast. Both are good people.
Thanks,
all right,
Kevin.
Rob. Do you want to just jump right into childhood trauma? let's get to the meat of this whole problem for us.
Let's go. Why not?
What's the most prominent childhood trauma memory, like as far back as you can go?
Really quick.
Where does it start at?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
What's your clean date and how long you got clean?
My clean date is October 2nd of 2016. So I'm right around 8.5 years.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Back to Josh's question.
Well, the earliest, the earliest that is still sort of intact,
stands out,
is a little while after I turned 4, a little while after my baby sister was born. Like on the way to the hospital to meet her, my dad had told me that it was my job to take care of her. That's what big brothers do, all that kind of thing. We were at daycare, and the infants were separated from the rest of us, and she had a severe sweet potato allergy, and that was in her paperwork, all that kind of crap, and somebody gave her, one of the staff there gave her sweet potatoes, and they had to call for an ambulance. It got insane. My dad was a cop, so he heard the call. When we got home from the hospital, I was directly asked why I'd let it happen.
Why you let it happen? You're in the other room?
Yeah, and I'm 4.
And 4 years old. Oh my God.
And when I tried to say, I didn't know, I wasn't in the room, whatever it was exactly, I just remember protesting, and I only got a few words out before he punched me in the stomach so hard that I blacked out. And when I came to being slapped in the face and told to quit my faking.
And you're 4 years old, your dad punches you in the stomach.
Yep, I go lights out.
Not lights out, and then he accuses you of faking it.
Yeah.
Grown man.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense to get punched in the stomach so hard it makes you black out.
At 4 years old, though.
Yeah.
when you're looking at a adult figure that's supposed to be protecting you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a head fuck.
And being held responsible for an infant at the age of 4.
You were just as responsible as he was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then after that, when I tried to talk to my mom about it, her response was that if I just didn't act that way, it wouldn't happen. And that's a theme in my childhood, is being blamed for what happened, getting beaten to the point of unconsciousness and being woke up to
Another beating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happened multiple times.
So that's like a cycle of physical abuse that you endured as a kid.
Yeah. Psychological, emotional.
Yeah, as I was going to say, what was the psychological one?
Well, the psychological one was blame, and that, as life progressed, shame and blame became part of my cycle as I got older and my actions were affecting me more than anyone else's actions. Shame and blame was always, that's taken more work than, I've even done yet to really unravel that, part of my process with trauma therapy and with recovery and just trying to get it out is, it's like we talk about shame and fear a lot, and those things go together, and everybody sort of has a different
perspective.
Yeah. But, I learned a little while ago that shame and fear, fear will cling to anything, and especially if you're a trauma victim, if you're an addict, fear sort of can glom on. But it's shame and blame that seem to be the tandem.
Do you have guilt too?
Yeah. Guilt ends up at this point being easier to sort of cycle through and process.
This point, yeah, but I'm talking about as a child.
Oh God. Yeah. It was always like,
your parents told you were the problem.
Always.
Yeah, that would be the guilt.
Yeah. Well, and
that it's all your fault.
And anything, like as we got older, anything that my sister might do wrong or anything that happened with her was my fault. It was all.
Well, that makes total sense.
Yeah. It was all, it was all a way to,
yeah.
Because part of what also happened is, my dad being a cop, he liked progressive discipline. So, I would get beaten usually, like the physical abuse happened over minor stuff, momentary things where he would blow up and lose it. Serious shit, which started happening more and more as I became more and more damaged and was trying to apply adult coping skills to my child brain, and compensate for things. If I would do something outright, break into a house when I was in grade school, just for the fun of doing it. Mm-hmm. That stuff, that was more ritualized, I think, in a way.
What do you mean ritualized? By your dad?
Yeah.
About the punishment?
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Because it would start with not speaking to me and me being in my room and knowing I was in trouble, which would, pretty standard, you're in trouble stuff. But
at that period of time?
Yes, yeah. In the 70s, in a rural red state. Yeah.
What state?
Idaho.
Okay.
Yeah. But that would be like, okay, drop your pants and
the belt, the switch,
the belt from the middle of my back down to my calves until he was sure. And it was all, that's where some of it was,
till he was sure.
Yeah.
Till
and for
I've,
me to
I've
try and-
made a difference.
Yes.
This
for
is
me
enough
to
for now.
for me to try and understand my place in that moment. Fuck. You know, because if I didn't cry, I got more. If I cried too soon, I got more for crying. There wasn't a way.
Rob, I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
Heard that a lot, huh?
oh yeah. And you know, and then the next phase for any of this stuff was, well, it's grounding quotes. What it really is. You know, if I was looking at it with one of the kids I work with, it was imprisonment. Because it would start off with a week in my room, not allowed to eat with the family, you know, and then another week where I could come out for meals and eat with the family, but I couldn't have dessert. You know, and we didn't always have dessert unless I was grounded, you know, to reinforce the punishment. And so I would learn whatever fuck it
Jesus
was.
Christ.
You know, and then I wouldn't be grounded in my room, but I could only watch TV for an hour. You know, I couldn't go out and play with friends, and yeah, I mean,
So besides the physical abuse, the emotional or you know, emotional abuse, was there any other type of abuse?
not in the home, but eventually,
It sounds like all those scenarios kind of touch on like all of it together. It's psychological, emotional, physical. Like
Yeah, it does. You're right.
that's like, I mean, all bases are covered in that. You know,
But that was all at home. You were going to say outside of the home,
yeah, or outside the family,
outside the family.
yeah. We had a babysitter. She was a college student who began molesting me when I was 7.
7?
Yeah.
That's pretty young.
Yeah,
how long did that last for?
couple years. And then that eventually, when my parents went out of town a few times, I would stay with her and her boyfriend, and it was both of them. Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah. And then, you know, I was outright raped by a neighbor kid who also attended the little local community college there. When I was 9. And that had happened because I'd walked home from school instead of taking the bus, and I cut through the woods and out in this particular part of the world at this time. I mean, it was literally the woods. These are all new neighborhoods. I went to a brand new school, and there's this old hunter's shack from, probably, you know, turn of the century.
1900s.
Yeah. And we would cut through there a lot because there's always like playboys and hustlers in this shack. And so we'd stop by and look at, and one time there was a dude there, and that was violent. And I'd say that in a distinction from any other the molestation that happened otherwise. Because part of what happened to me is that I started to lean into that because it was not violent. It wasn't demeaning. It wasn't vicious, and it didn't hurt. It was fucking wrong, but it didn't feel as horrifying as
Rape.
what would happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, getting a C on a report card.
Was it really? Is that level was similar with your dad?
Yeah.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. And it wouldn't always be that way. One of the things I know now, some of that inconsistency.
Dad's still alive?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I cut off contact with both of my parents in 1999.
So you haven't communicated with them.
Sister?
Last time I talked to my sister was 2006.
And intentionally cut her off too?
No, she kind of cut everyone off. Yeah, I mean, she didn't get what I got, but life wasn't great for her either.
I would imagine. Yeah.
No, like it was it's a really demeaning environment when it comes right down to it. And my mom was a credit union manager, and my dad ended up being the number 2 law enforcement official in the state. So we had on the outside a lot of money. We had the nice house in the nice neighborhood. My dad would be on the news for things, and we looked like, but inside, it's, I spent a lot of school years in my bedroom because I couldn't keep my grades consistent. My dad would cycle from this viciousness and this cold, ugly demeanor to all he wanted to do was work on things and go camping and just this stuff that I never knew what I needed to be in order to be safe.
Did you have shame and guilt growing up that led you to using?
Yes. Oh yeah.
So all of that, what
Yeah.
you just talked about.
Well, I was addicted to a lot of things that allowed me to not feel like me or to not be me or to be some other place.
Earlier, it was stuff besides drugs.
Yeah, but reading.
Right.
I started, I had Tolkien read. I read, started reading Kurt Vonnegut when I was like in the 3rd grade, stuff that just people that painted pictures for
Something to get away
of a
from.
world
Yeah.
where, was not mine.
Or something to get away with.
Like
Yeah.
fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of us had that fantasy escape
Yeah.
through other means, music and books and
Yeah.
reading.
And music was the other thing.
Fuck, I still do it, dude.
Yeah.
My brain, I wake up in the morning and my brain is in fantasy land, dude. I'm spinning stories and planning and plotting the fucking
So you do
future.
that without books or
Yeah.
music or anything, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a little different.
Yeah, I can do
It's
that
the same,
too.
It's the same thing though. Is like I'm not. Well,
Present?
to me, it is. It's like I need to accomplish more, and so like I just start imagining all of these possibilities,
see.
and then I start trying to figure out how to get there, and which ones make sense.
That's your mental picture of getting loaded.
Basically, yeah.
Interesting.
When did it turn into drugs?
Well, my dad used to, when things were going good, or if he felt bad, sometimes he'd open up a bottle of the old Michelob, and he would pour a small glass for me, and we would sit and talk, and I would have the 4 or 5 ounces, whatever it was, and I started grabbing, like the pretty typical story, when there'd be parties at my house, my parents would have parties.
You get the leftovers.
I'd get the leftovers,
Let me ask you, did that little shot of beer change how you felt? Did you recognize then? Could you see?
Yes, at least in that action in that moment. It was a moment of peace with my father. It was a moment of acceptance. And it was okay.
Oh, even if the alcohol didn't do it.
Yeah, and it could have been all of
So you correlated the beer with
yeah.
everything might be okay right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Makes sense.
and then
Interesting.
a few years later, it would be like at Christmas and holidays and stuff like that. Like my mom had a thing for Mogan David wine.
I don't know what that is. It sounds cheap.
It's alcoholic grape juice. Yeah. And so I would get a glass of that at times. Those sort of important family dinners. And then. I also, I ended up being left home alone a lot. Because, I was causing too many problems at daycare or any of that shit, So I'd be home by myself, and I'd also I would fucking take spoonfuls of the Nestle Quick and just eat it, just the powder and eat it. And then, like, I remember like playing The Floor Is Lava all by myself in the living room, running on the couches and just being bounced. And then I started to get into the wine in the fridge and started sipping off the bottles of whiskey and scotch that my dad had.
And that would change how you felt inside?
That changed how I felt.
How old are you?
That started around 8 or 9, I think.
So you started young.
Yeah.
Recognizing that you can change the way you feel.
Yeah. Well, one of the stories I'll tell if I chair a meeting is that when I was 7, there's a few years that were particularly bad. And 2nd grade was one of the worst. I can't remember what I'd gotten in trouble for, but my dad picked me up under the jaw by my face, kind of, and just rocketed me up and smashed my face into the ceiling. And it tore like a strip down my nose. It split my head open, put a hole in the ceiling. And, I had to go to school.
Did you go to the hospital?
No.
Wow.
No, we weren't big on that.
They would ask questions.
They
and
would.
your dad would have to answer some questions.
Yeah, but like Mrs. Gillenwater, on reckon her anonymity, my 2nd grade teacher, was probably like, I recognize now was probably the first person who saw that something was wrong and tried to help. I mean, she put me on sort of a behavioral plan, which was unheard of at that time in place, to try and, she was trying to help, but, and she would ask questions of my parents, which didn't go well. And, I remember having to lie to her. By then I was wrestling, and my dad had put me in karate. So there was ways to explain some things off.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And, I remember lying, and I remember like knowing in the moment that she didn't believe me.
Did she ever expose the abuse?
Huh?
Did she ever expose it?
No. My dad was...
Did it ever get exposed?
Sorta. When
Publicly?
I was 13. But that was a big, yeah. But I went into the bathroom in the 2nd grade at school, and just tried to pray to anything, everything. We weren't a religious family particularly, I was closing my eyes while I was standing there and looking in the mirror, and I wanted to be anyone else. I wanted to be someone else. Specifically, I wanted to be Sean Cassidy. I wanted, it was, and when I opened my eyes and I was still me, I remember that.
Who's Sean Cassidy?
He was a pop star.
Oh, got it. Okay.
From the 70s. His older brother was in the Partridge Family. And was it Partridge? Yeah, I don't know. The Cassidy brothers. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Musicians.
Yeah.
All right.
And and all the girls.
How did the what is progression from alcohol to the next substance and so on?
Well, it took a long time. Because I switched from karate to judo, and I was an elite wrestler. So a lot of that didn't appeal to me directly.
Still drinking though?
Oh yeah, whenever I could.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
The judo and the karate and the wrestling, did that give you an outlet for your aggression, like thinking it was your dad or whatever?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
I didn't become explosively violent until, puberty, I think.
13.
Yeah, keyed a lot of that off. Maybe like 5th grade is when, fighting and other stuff became a more regular thing. When whatever it was I was trying to keep inside was starting to really come out. But, because that also turned into a trap itself at one point, because I'd been doing so much. When my dad tried to fucking pop me in the head over something, I blocked it.
Oops.
And that was awful. Yeah, he beat the fuck out of me.
That always seemed to, in my situation, that would always make things worse.
Yeah.
Laughing or like getting to a point where what was happening didn't hurt anymore. It was like the end result is not being accomplished, and they're just now more upset. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that because I had training and I had just rage, and because I was completely powerless with my father, and even with my mom's psychological bullshit. Once I started getting into fights, like the thing in karate is when you go into a competition and you get hit, and nothing bad happens. Like, you can take a punch, and I knew I could.
Yeah.
There's an exhilarating thing that happens. I think it's why a lot of people like combative competition, participating in it, because it's not bloodthirsty normally. It's a different level of competition. But for me, what ended up happening is it was a way to be how I felt, fighting, and judo was a lot different. Wrestling was a lot different because it's a lot more rules. You don't want to piss off a judo instructor because they know more than you. It's one of the things I used to say, and it's sort of true, is like I never really lost a fight. There's a lot that I didn't win. I got the shit beat out of me, but I never stopped. Like, I remember high school starting to fight with these two dudes at a frat party at the university, and man, they couldn't hurt me enough. And I stomped one of their knees. It was vicious, because I was just
Rage.
Yeah. And they fucked me up. Like, I did lose that fight, but they walked away hurting, and that became a goal in any of that stuff, because it would be like I would try to, like hell, I would have the flight or freeze response in most confrontation until I got pushed, and once it happened, I got even more mad that I was that mad, and then
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And then I was trying to hurt people, and I knew how. If I got you to the ground, you were in deep fucking trouble, and it didn't matter who you were.
Did that adrenaline rush play a part, like changing the way you feel?
Yeah.
So you can correlate that with like getting loaded. Or
Yes.
That was also a drug.
Yeah.
Cortisol shot.
Because my first hard drugs.
Cortisol?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Cortisol is the fight or flight drug, is the chemical. Yeah. My first hard drug use, my first anything beyond alcohol was at the Dead show in Boise, Idaho.
Of course it was.
How old were you?
13.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
We went to a Dead show at 13.
It was the one and only time the Dead ever played in Boise.
I'm assuming it was probably LSD.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
you hit LSD before you hit pot?
Yeah, I
No
did.
shit.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. Well, my dad was the anti.
Right on, brother.
I'm so proud of you, Rob.
Yeah. I skipped a grade.
You did. It's
Yeah.
almost exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Like you didn't do
Yeah.
pot
Well,
first.
I mean, pot was weird, and it seemed like smoke, and it was like I had on the constructive side all of this stuff, doing martial arts and wrestling.
Those guys don't smoke
No,
cigarettes or
no,
smoke
and you
pot.
take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that I know that was responding to the insecurity, the literal lack of safety in my life, but I could be like, fit and strong and all that stuff. And I could be proud of that, and it could feed my ego.
LSD is nutritional, so I mean, there's that.
Yeah. And it changed my fucking life. I
Fucking kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Somebody's going to listen to this and go, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, you eat it. It's got to have some nutritional value.
Right.
Put it on a sugar cube.
That's what I was telling myself at 14.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, LSD, it changed everything. And it certainly, because of the way it opens you up and the way that all of a sudden life becomes bigger and possibilities become more, and I didn't feel terrible. And there was half naked hippie chicks being really fucking nice to me and all that, all that shit in that environment at that time. And people having fun and just joy for joy's sake.
How old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah.
I'm
Talking to you.
closing in on 57.
You're a liar.
Yeah.
No, that's, I was just relating because that's the same era. Like, we grew up in the same era.
It's funny. Last night, someone was sharing at a meeting, and they were
Are
talking.
you making another old joke right now?
No, I won't do the old jokes. Nope. Someone was sharing at a meeting. Not this time, anyway. Someone was sharing at a meeting that their vision was so narrow, they just saw the world through a little peephole, and they came into recovery, and everything started to become possible. And there was they were finding joy and all the stuff you were just describing.
Yeah.
Your experience with LSD, someone correlated it with their experience recovery last night. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense, though.
Yeah,
It's in
Perception.
many ways, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
What I was doing was,
Eye-opening.
and it was the wrong way to try and feel better.
You don't know that at that time, though. At that time, it's just this is fucking wow.
No, and I know that really starting drugs and really taking that road saved my fucking life.
Yeah, what's the progression from there? What does that look like?
Well,
So a couple hits of acid at a Dead show turned into
whatever I could get.
at all, it just from that point on, it was this is what I'm doing.
I didn't really start smoking pot until sophomore year of high school.
Did you graduate high school?
No,
Okay.
when I left and got my GED.
Okay. And by that time, it was anything, everything, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried almost everything by the time I left high school. And
What was your drug of choice?
meth ended
Okay.
up being
How long did it take you to transition from LSD to meth?
that took a long time. The first time I did, crank, was at the fair. And I think it was still junior or senior year of high school.
So 4 years, something like that.
Yeah,
3,
before I
4
tried
years.
it. And I didn't like it much at the time.
Did you smoke it or snort it or?
Snorted it.
Okay.
And it was a lot. I didn't mind the feeling, but it was almost too much of me
Did you
at the time.
Tense,
did
huh?
you do too much? Is it when
It's
you
possible.
say it was a lot?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
possible.
Yeah.
It was me, my friend, and my girlfriend, and it was the first time the three of us had ever done it. And we'd heard terrible things about tweakers, but it was well, let's see.
Of course, there's
See how terrible this really is.
because it couldn't be that bad. No one's dead yet.
Are we talking old school peanut butter
Yes.
bathtub crank?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Nope, not at all. Well, and you get people coming up to Boise from northern Nevada who were chemists at the mines. Mm-hmm. And boy, could they fucking cook.
Well, California had a very sophisticated distribution center out of some outlaws.
Yeah.
And so we got the pure
Yeah.
P2P ether-based
Yeah. With
hard shit.
the ball with a purple, almost liquidy center because it hadn't finished setting up yet. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not to trigger everybody listening, but that's just memory lane right there.
That's triggering.
Makes my hair stand up a little bit thinking
Yeah.
about all that.
Well, and it's triggering because how fucking awful, how awful it is to look at that now and go, why was that glorious?
Right?
And it,
Well, the experience, the fucked up part about drugs is the experience of drugs is an amazing experience.
Euphoric.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. There's nothing else like it. But what addicts do with it and how we're like
Consequences.
we can't handle it. We don't handle it well. Some people handle it really well. Like they can enjoy it and experience it and it's over.
Yeah, I know normal people who will occasionally do meth.
Yeah.
Like if everything's taken care of and
Yeah.
all the
Bills
somebody's
are
watching the
paid.
kids
Yeah,
and the
right.
bills are paid.
Yeah, like-
and then they don't do it again for a year.
Yeah.
You know, or mushrooms or ecstasy. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Those guys are underachievers.
They are. They just totally suck at drugs.
Again,
But
sarcasm.
they're really good at life.
Please
That's
don't
bullshit.
take this literally.
Yeah. You know, but it is that I'd have died. When I was 13, I took one of my dad's guns to school and we had an arsenal. It was one of my dad's
Well,
things.
he's a cop, and you're in Idaho.
Yeah. You know, and he was, you know, part of the deal is that my dad was counterinsurgency in Vietnam. That's where some of his
Oh, that's where all the mess came from. He brought that shit back with him.
to a great extent.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of family history on both sides of the family. So
What with abuse or with just
some abuse and a lot of substance abuse, and it skipped some people, but
Sure.
each generation going back 4 or 5, like my dad's family was blue blood Boston money. You know, they lived in the southern suburbs, but you know, people had too many kids, and a lot of that got eaten away by a lot of the family being in retirement homes for a long time. A lot of my dad's family lives well past 90, always has.
Yeah. And alcoholism riddled through the whole family. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. My dad's dad was an alcoholic and a rageaholic.
then there's even more reason for the trauma. So
Well, except I've learned a lot about that side of the family. When I went back and lived in Boston, my experience
what not to sidetrack. So let's maybe we were at like GED into high school.
Yeah.
And so at what point did you go back to Boston from there? Was it before that or after that?
I went back twice. Once to the first time to quit meth.
So that was your first geographic?
Yeah,
And that was
I was 19.
That was after high school. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we're out of high school, moving into adulthood, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and when I was 13, I got caught with that gun at school. Somebody narked me off, and I had every intention of shooting myself in the bathroom. I was going to
At school?
At school.
So there was suicide in this story too.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I,
This is before the acid.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Took some acid and fucking all of a sudden, dude,
Felt better.
Yeah,
I don't need to shoot myself.
I feel better.
Yeah. Well, I switched from being in some pretty direct suicidality to decades of suicide on the layaway plan.
Right. Yeah, your addiction.
Yeah.
Because I was never trying to live, you know, and I got stuck in that place. And people who know me, you know, I say this often is, you know, didn't want to live, didn't want to die. That's really fucked. You know, for me,
Yeah.
you know, that's not anything. That is, you know, that's a shell. That is that for me. That's that place I hear other addicts describe. However they describe it, you know, it's just there's nowhere from there. That's zero. You know, if you don't want to die, or you can't quite get yourself to die, but you can't do anything to just live.
Yeah, it's a fucking spiritual stalemate. You're just
It's absolutely
for sure.
And that is the perfect way to describe it because
Yeah.
there's no spirituality there. You know, it's that, you know, there's something in the living clean
it's
about
it's a void. You just
Yeah.
have a void of nothingness.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
What
that
was the living clean?
where they talk about since spirituality is practical, that section, where it's one member said, well, you know, I was out there and, you know, felt like my spirit had died, but really my spirit was always there. It was dragging me around like a resistant pet. You know, my spirit was there. we just weren't talking, you know,
Yeah.
and that's that place, you know, and it's the sort of the danger zone now is how do I, if I get caught up in repeat behaviors, do I end up taking myself back to that place where it's not about anything? And I don't need to do drugs to do that. That's what I've learned in the last 8.5 years.
Was some of your nervousness coming into the podcast today, was it based on knowing that you were going to talk about some of that stuff more so than like the idea of sharing it with other people, maybe like actually bringing up those memories again? And
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, severe trauma is triggering. And I mean, everyone in the room has done trauma therapy, so we know that, you know, and it's hard. That's one of the hardest things in trauma recovery.
I recently got an expungement for my record and just for California, and I'm going for a governor's pardon now, and they required me to write an autobiography. And my attorney, like I paid the attorney 6-8 months ago, and I just now in the last like 2 weeks did the autobiography, like started and sent off the first couple drafts because I don't want to look at it. Every time I start thinking about writing about like my childhood and all that stuff again, I was like, dude, I don't want to go back there. Like I've worked really hard to not be in that place, and then having to like rewrite it all, like, man, I just avoided it for so long.
So let me ask both of you guys, after you've done some trauma therapy, are there parts, and it seems to me, Rob, that there's parts of your childhood that you can just state as facts and not have it trigger emotions?
Yes.
Does that hold true for you too,
Yes.
Josh?
Yeah.
So that's one of the ultimate goals of trauma therapy, not regular therapy, but trauma therapy is to be able to go, yes, I was molested as a kid. It happened. It really sucked and it should never have happened. And my parents should have protected me and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it doesn't trigger emotions that I need to cover.
Yeah.
The memories, the memories still hurt. What I think I got from trauma therapy, the most that I got from it, I need to go do more. The more we talk about it, the more I want to go do more. But like I noticed that that stuff has less control over my life
Exactly
today.
the point. Yeah.
But when I think about it and I replay it, the memories still hurt. And so like I just was like avoiding that for the writing process.
You still have pain, but you don't react the same.
Sure, yeah. It doesn't, because before it was like driving blind, you know, like today is like before the trauma therapy, and it's not that it happened right away, but by going through that process, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm reacting in a way that I don't need to based off of this.
That's the
like
clarity.
You could correlate it to specific events or a bunch of different events that like led me to believe this certain thing about myself that makes me act a certain way in a scenario today. Yeah. And so like the long-term effect was helped or mildly corrected through the trauma therapy, but thinking about the shit still.
Well, and that's
suck.
That's, you know, we talk about it in all forms of recovery is moving from reaction to response.
Sure.
You know, which is a lot of work all by fucking self. And just because you got it down in a few areas doesn't mean it's going to jump up and bite your ass in something you weren't expecting.
Yeah. It's nice to have the moment to pause and like see it though. Like, cause usually like if you have enough space to pause, you can usually make a better decision, you know?
Yes.
Which is not,
it's so nice. Like when I remember like when that started being my default, like it's not always, but like it's the majority of the time, my default is what's going on with me right now? Like instead of just like reacting to whatever's going on. And
to me, it's like, you know, and to go back to that, your question, it ends up being like clearing a minefield. I don't step on a mine all the time.
I told you,
but I don't. But I'm still in a minefield, and it's not like I'm stuck. It means every fucking once in a while, You know, it's like there's a loud boom and I watch my foot flying off in some direction. It's just, and that does leave me. And that's where some of the trepidation, like I talk to people about some of this stuff. I talk to my sponsor about a lot. There's nothing that.
Have you had the same sponsor the whole time?
Yes.
Have you've gone through the steps a couple times, or
Yeah.
how many times have you done the steps?
Twice.
Have you done traditions, concepts? Nice.
So, yeah, and it was really funny. Like, you know, I've only done the traditions once, but it was one
Don't
of the
say
most.
only.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's guys with 30
a
years
lot of
that's
people
never
never
done the
do 'em,
tradition.
yeah.
So.
Well, I found that to be one of the most enlightening
Me too.
pieces of work.
Me too, dude.
Because when you're drawing it back to your experience, to you, it's a different mirror. The traditions are because it's setting you up for belonging. You know, it's one of those.
Right.
It's one of those recovery
that's
tricks.
good.
That
It is a
happens.
community lesson.
Yes, you know, and
the steps help me with myself, deal with myself. Traditions help me learn how to deal with everybody else.
yeah, and how to see me in a different as part of
humility and
Yeah.
acceptance and unconditional love. All
Yeah.
that I remember, like, those were all big things for me in the traditions.
Yeah, well, I talk a lot about like one of the dirtiest tricks of recovery is that you know you're told you can be of a help with one day if you pick up cigarette butts, if you help with coffee, if you put away chairs, if you keep an open mind towards other addicts. And really what's happening there is you're being programmed to get better at that. You know, and I don't say program in a negative way. I mean, it's really, we're trying to reprocess who we are when we come in. And then all of a sudden it gets flipped where it's like, okay, so you've been learning all these skills. Now use them on you if you don't want to get loaded again. If you want to feel better, can you practice these principles in your own affairs, in your own head, and in your own heart? That's one of the fucking hardest things there is. And it's, you know, that whole like, wait, you guys fucking tricked me into giving a fuck about me,
Yeah.
you know, by giving a fuck about you.
I want to go back to a description that I was given about how we perceive trauma after we've done trauma. And it's and we can apply that to just non-trauma stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is this is just one person's take of their experience is swearing. If I'm describing a situation that I had trauma with growing up, or even in the rooms while we're in recovery, if I'm swearing at the trauma or the situation or whatever it is, then I'm still triggered. And if I could describe something instead of swearing as this fucking thing happened to me, or that fucking guy, or this, you know,
There's such a huge difference between this motherfucker and this guy.
yeah, there is. But not to say that's like, you know, I swear at like, oh, that's a beautiful fucking picture.
Yeah.
Dude, that shit's amazing. Or fuck you and your fucking picture.
Yeah. That's
So that's how
Same
we
words.
describe trauma.
Yeah.
You know, we can understand if we're triggered or if we're just having a description.
Yeah, one of the things I've had to realize for me, and I don't know how much progress, I mean, this is one of those works in progress kind of things, is like, you know, we talk a lot about changing our language. We talk, especially towards ourselves. You know, and I've been given assignments by my trauma therapist and my sponsor to keep an eye on certain things at certain times. And I've been stunned at the words that come out my mouth about me. Or in my head about me.
Yeah.
And there's some specific words and all that.
It makes such a big difference how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah. And mine is like, I've had to switch language in ways like, I can't talk about fighting my demons. I can't, anything that involves conflict and me.
Interesting.
Well, what I've identified is that I'm highly susceptible to the abuse cycle in behavior, in response. You know, even on a good day, there's a position I can't find myself in. And it might be permanent, and that's okay.
It's good. It's good to recognize that, because that takes some like really deep, like self-understanding, self-awareness, introspective.
Yeah.
Like,
So true.
I
Josh.
can't be stimulated in a way that, like, because if I'm fighting my demons or I'm doing this, I'm almost always in a small frame in fight or flight. There's a piece of my brain that is constantly stimulated.
And what tiny thing does it take for you to be pushed wholly into that?
You're already mildly
primed.
activated.
You are primed.
Yeah. It's like it's like the same thing with driving. Like, if people say you're in a defensive state when you're driving, that's why road rage happens, is because your baseline is a little bit more elevated than normal, but it's normal because you drive so much. You don't realize that you're slightly stimulated. Somebody does something that's offensive or dangerous, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm going to fucking kill this person.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill him, and I don't care who sees it.
Because it feels life-threatening on top of essentially already being passively triggered.
Sure. That's good. Passively triggered. That's
well, and that's like when you talk about baseline, and that's trauma therapy talk, is how do we adjust our baseline?
Yeah.
With my PTSD diagnosis, I have the co-relatives of panic attack disorder and major depressive disorder, right? So my baseline is always a little hairy.
I imagine when I think about that kind of stuff, for me personally, I imagine an image of a brain and that, like, the level in the brain raises, and the higher the level goes, the more red that it changes colors as it gets higher.
Yeah.
And so like
a thermometer.
All right. So like I'm a little bit in fight or flight. Okay. I go for a drive. Okay. I'm hungry. Okay. I'm lonely. It just starts. It's my, like, I'm worried about work, and like, there's all these things. And like, before I know it, I'm like, who the fuck am I? What's happening right now?
Well, and that's when we're, for me, like, the freedom we talk about is based on my baseline. Because all that other life shit, that doesn't stop. And I've tried to get people to stop lifing me. And it's never fucking worked, right?
Yeah.
And God damn them for being human. And God damn them for going through...
Doing normal shit.
Yes, like I'm doing as well, right?
Yeah.
So when I've got my baseline as low as I could get it at a given moment, when life sort of adds to my pile, to my workload, to my anything, it's okay. If I've gotten to a place, and I guess this is what we would talk about based on, the maintenance of my spiritual condition.
Recovery based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
if you didn't have recovery? Sorry, Josh.
Yeah.
It would be a shit show constantly. Unfunctional.
I was.
Yeah. You had a question?
Well, no, it was more a statement. It is a statement. The more consistently that I'm aware of how much space I have, like what my bandwidth is,
Yes.
the less affected I can be by things that typically I would grab. Mm-hmm. Like, because what most of my elevated baseline comes from is grabbing things.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You were talking about changing language, and I do that with Josh a lot when we work together.
Yeah.
He would say, I think this is going on, or I think, and he uses the word think. And I always prompt, right?
And that's hard. That's one of the hardest things.
Dude, feelings and thoughts were the same thing to me, but when I first started working steps, there was no difference. And he would say, like, no, Josh, that's a feeling. And I'd be like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Or you would think you would think it's a feeling, but your addict has convinced you.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, or that.
Yeah.
Or it would be a feeling, and I'd be like, no, I think.
Well,
that's the same thing I just said. I think I just said the same thing two different ways.
That's one of the trickiest things. Like what I've discovered is as you chip away at some of this big stuff, and then clear the low-hanging fruit is how I've put it before, of this stuff. And it's not that it's unimportant. We're cleaning up mess, and any of the mess we clean up is big deal compared to where we were before. That low hanging fruit is still fruit. and we still picked it. Pruning the tree, getting to the big stuff, which is sort of what I've left myself with, or the stuff that is a lot harder.
Haven't quite figured out yet.
Yes, haven't accepted in some ways. I mean, that's one of the weirdest things is, I've had some recent revelations about, okay, as much as I can be factual about what happened to me as a child, there's some things that there's just not any acceptance to, and they've
Yet.
come up. Yeah.
I think it's possible too that, for me, there's certain things for me that I don't even know what they are. Like there's just areas, there's things that happen where it's like, I'm triggered by something and there's no correlation. Like I can't find it. Like meditation, trauma therapy, whatever. There's something that's there and I can't identify it.
Well,
I don't know what it
my
is.
therapist, when I've said almost exactly that about like, I'm triggered, but there wasn't a trigger. And she's like, yes, there was. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
And some of it, you might not.
Yeah,
don't
because
know what you don't know?
I recognize that I'm triggered, and
Yes.
I recognize the response that I'm having, or the reaction based off of it.
Yeah.
But
I remember having that conversation with you.
I think
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, there's too many things happening for me to understand what's happening.
Yeah. One of the big breakthrough moments in trauma therapy for me was the day I was like, I am done asking how or why, the way I am. I know. And my therapist was like, yeah, things and stuff. And you know what those things and stuff were. So stop asking why. Stop asking how it happened. Cause it's the now, right? It's, if there's
some ownership.
Yeah. You don't need to know what the trigger is or why to use the tools you've learned to respond instead of react. I don't need to know. And fuck fighting that. And I mean, Kevin, that's
I need a solution. I want a solution. I want to know what the problem is, and I want to fix it.
Yeah. And that
tough.
is not what we do.
Right.
Josh was talking about like not knowing.
Yeah.
I have an example. It took me 28 years in recovery, let alone my life, to find out that I was molested as a kid.
Yeah.
28 years it stayed a secret.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't a conscious secret.
Mm-mm.
My brain put it in a category like, oh, I didn't, the guy just touched me. There was no sex. So nothing happened really. You know what I mean? And so it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
And it doesn't affect me.
Right.
Until 28 years later, I'm like contemplating suicide. The article in the paper triggered it that this guy got caught for molesting hundreds of kids because he got hired by the county at juvenile hall.
Ugh.
Yeah. And then that triggered me. And I was like, I hate my fucking life.
Right. And it can go that way. And because of the work I do with kids, it's like I understand some of the developmental processes really well. I understand, when you're forced to adult, when your brain can't do it.
Yeah.
When you are trying to adopt coping skills that human children haven't had to have since we were hunted by fucking saber-toothed tigers, you don't know where to put it. And you're not capable of it. There's parts of the brain for adapting to some of what life throws at you that don't even start until you're 10, don't even finish till you're 25. And we're out there trying to figure out how to not get savaged by people who are supposed to care. What does a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 18-year-old even? I mean, some of these things, we weren't built to do it, but we were left with the wreckage. And I struggle. So I get furious sometimes. I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I've done all this work. I've shoveled this much coal. And yet I still step on one of those landmines, you
Yeah.
know, and that's a trick. That's a way for me to be in a fight with me. That's a way for me to automatically be susceptible to my own bullshit and therefore susceptible to someone else's.
Cool. Let's move to some 4-step stuff.
Yes.
So tell us right at the very end when you got clean, what was that situation like?
My ex-wife and I were grossly incompatible by that time.
And you've had a kid.
Yeah, and we had a kid.
How old are you at this point?
This 48, 48. You know, we were both in the grips of active addiction and untreated trauma.
Still meth?
I wasn't doing meth. I only did meth a little bit in the last 10 years of using it. It was just too much for me. You know, I was too old for it, I think, is my body was telling me. But, you know, and I switched to drinking, which is like my least favorite high aside from pills, you know, but I was
Same.
pounding whiskey and scotch and beer and smoking a shit ton of weed, and just shutting down. She had started doing meth, you know, and it was untreated trauma, active addiction, and a marriage and parenting. I mean, we were pretty fucked.
That's a shit show.
We were pretty fucked, and it sucked because neither one of us were like, I hate you, but we hated each other. Yeah, you know, and it was too much. You know, her shit was too much for her, mine was too much for me, and trying to figure out with different childhood traumas how to raise our kid the best finally took its toll. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we were stepping on each other's triggers constantly without even fully knowing it, you know.
So is this when you found out about NA
Oh, no.
or AA?
No, my first meeting was in December of 1990.
So how'd you get there?
How'd I get there? I had friends who suddenly decided to stop partying because they thought they had a problem, and I couldn't figure that out because we did the same stuff and I didn't have a problem.
Yeah.
So I started going with them to meetings, like, and supporting them. You know.
Yeah.
Also, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" You know, there's nothing wrong with me, so there can't be anything wrong with you. Otherwise, I might have to think about it. And yeah, I'd go to these meetings and be like, "Holy shit, what is going on here?" And go home and smoke a lot of pot and just be like, "Fuck, what the fuck was that?" And I was, you know, that's when I was playing music and gigging a lot, and went home one night after a show, and we used to give out a lot of counter authority literature, and I used to pick up thousands of condoms from Planned Parenthood, and we would distribute at our shows, and went home and got a girl pregnant with literally 3,000 condoms within arm's reach, you know. And
Oops.
it was at that point, yeah. And it was when she told me she was pregnant, and I was like, I might have a problem. I might. And so I started going and actually going, okay, maybe I need to stop. Maybe I am.
This is that I'm timeline. I'm lost a little bit. This is at 48, like when you're
No, this is 91, 92.
okay. And then you fell away from it, whatever happened. And then,
Yeah. Well, it started touching on shit. You know, I started going to therapy, at school. And
Meetings.
And meetings. Yeah. A lot of AA because there wasn't a lot of NA at the time.
where were you physically?
Boise.
Okay.
And, you know, I didn't do the 30, 60, 90 sort of in-out thing. I would do the 1 week and then, okay, I can't do this. And then, you know, okay, I'll do another week and, okay, I can't do this for, you know, and finally I got 6 months at one point and then went out, and then I sort of was trying, and also trying to avoid as much shit in here as possible.
Yeah. You
So I was
haven't
just
connected the dots that the steps could help you with that yet?
no, like when I did my first fourth step and fifth step, which were moderately honest and searching, right? And
Yeah.
certainly not very fearless. And we started rolling through the steps, and I was in the eighth step and finishing it up, and it hit me incorrectly that I was going to have to apologize to my parents. I might have to apologize to people who had molested or raped me. And
That's twisted.
oh yeah, and I was like, and that no one was telling me that, but that's what amends sounded like to me. Sandwich in between a disease of addiction and mental illness from trauma. And I couldn't do it. And then a couple of close friends died within a few months of each other. And I didn't immediately go out, but I fucking left recovery. Couldn't do it. I didn't want it. And I made it to like 2+ years. But the last 5 or 6 months of that was outside of the program and far away from recovery.
So what triggered you to finally get clean?
This time?
Oh, yeah.
Well, my family fell apart. My 20-year relationship was over. I wasn't living in the same house as my son anymore.
And you knew there was a place to go.
Yeah, well, and I almost killed myself and someone else the night I moved out. I drank nearly a half a gallon of whiskey throughout the course of the day. I'd eaten some pills. I'd done a little meth. And just came to in time to swerve enough to not.
Oh, in the car?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I lived in that space with the nodding out and swerving.
Yep.
I don't know how the fuck I'm alive. There's no. I drove so much all the time, everywhere. Like
No logical reason you're alive?
No, there's times I've woke up with driver and passenger side up on the center divider on the freeway. Like there's a little bit of a lip on the bottom that sticks out farther than the actual wall so that your tires hit before you slam into it. I would wake up popping up off of that thing and I've literally come to on top of it and oh shit, swerve yank the steering wheel and through traffic on the freeway. Yeah. I don't even know how many times I've swerved through traffic on like blacked out.
Yeah.
Like I've come to stopped on the freeway. I've come to like in people's yards. Don't know how I got there. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Part of that night, and on my last milestone coming up to it, like one of the memories of that last night, my last night of using it just suddenly popped in very prominently. And it's not like I'd forgotten it at all, but it was like, the flashing light was like, it was bad. Like, tore his car apart, tore mine apart. All of my airbags had gone off. And this kid that I'd nearly killed came up and knocked on my window as I'm sitting there going, what the fuck have I done? Knocked on and it's like, are you okay? And that sank in over the course of a few hours.
You didn't roll down the window and said, no, my dad abused me when I was a kid.
No. All I did was nod. So
you're not okay, period.
No, there was no, it wasn't even, fuck, I was fucked. I knew I was fucked on all accounts. And I kind of had to get there. What I've learned about the way these afflictions work for me in tandem, is that like my disease doesn't really want me dead. It's a vampire. It wants to feed off me. It needs me to feel like I'm okay. So it's got something to take. there's two voices: the voice of my disease and the voice of my trauma. You know, and I don't know which one's which exactly, but there's one voice saying you don't deserve to get better, and there's another voice that will say you can't get better. And like the good fortune in that is those things are sort of opposite. You know, I need to feel like I can get better for not deserving it to really just tear me apart, and I need to feel like I deserve it for I can't. I can't.
Rob, that's
get
really
better.
heavy.
It is.
That's heavy.
Yeah, you know, and it's trying to navigate that in a constructive way and just be like, okay, so that's wrong. You know, well, now what do? I do deserve to get better, and I can. You know, it's a trip.
All right, I got this one question. We're going to pause real quick here. All right, quick break there. So, Rob, we talked a lot about trauma, and so now we're getting into, and you told us about the last day loaded, and we want to start asking these 4-step questions like reservations. And one of the questions is, tell us about a reservation you had when you first got clean. And then I have a follow-up question for that.
Oh,
A lot of people talk about, like, if this happens,
Yeah.
I'll get loaded,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
you know, having been in recovery before, you know, such as it was,
Right?
I didn't roll in on a pink cloud. I didn't come in thinking that I could outthink where I was, and not that I haven't tried to, but so some of those things that seem immediate, you know, I'd pretty much lost everything, and especially the self-respect, and you know, I was back in a place of not wanting to live, but not really wanting to die. So, I knew I was in trouble. So some of that wasn't an immediate, like, well, I'm going to do this until or unless, you know, I'm not sure what I would do if something happened to my son. You know, that's, you know,
Is that at the early in recovery or still
Yeah.
today?
Today I have a lot more perspective on that. I wouldn't want to fucking go down because something happened to him. That's not what he would want for me. At the time, he was one of the only things I had left. You know, so you know, I remember though being pretty clear, like if I can't start feeling better, then I don't want to fucking do this. I don't want to put myself through this and not get better.
So a reservation would be like, if this doesn't work, then fuck it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, you know, that stuck for a long time, and there's still vestiges of that.
That's the second part of the question is, what does that look like now in today? Because you know it's working.
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's,
it just slowly but surely kept working. Like, if this doesn't work, then fuck it. If this doesn't work, then fuck it. You just get to a bigger level of, if this doesn't
Yeah.
work, then fuck it.
yeah. And now it's like when I suddenly go face down hard, and it's because I got in my own way. I'll have those moments of, this isn't working, fuck it. But, you know, when things are fucking hard, you know, one of the only things I can get out of my mouth at a meeting, if I get called on or any of that shit, is I'm just doing what I'm supposed to, you know, and there's going to be times where it doesn't feel like it's working.
You know what? When you say that at meetings, that's a call for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Rob's not okay,
Yeah.
and we know to come.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny because I'm not a big faith person. That's one of the areas I struggle with, is just having faith.
Yeah.
You know, that's definitely, I have to practice. I'm always been more of a hope person, to a fault in a way. But my last just deep, hard hit, that part of it one of the little dirty tricks of recovery is all of a sudden it hit me one day. I was like, wait, even if I don't think it's working and I'm still doing what I'm supposed to,
It's working.
that's faith. That's,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I was like, oh fuck, I just got tricked into having faith.
That's what happened to me. I got maybe 8 months. What's the date today? Is it the 9th?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think if it's the 9th, yesterday I had 8 months. And for months in the beginning of that, coming back from that was like, I don't want to be here. This is like, fuck this. But like, no matter what, I was still doing it.
Yes.
I'm like, why the fuck this is fucking, and like, there's part of me that knew I just had to be here. I have faith that like, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to get better.
Yeah. Even if you aren't actively participating in faith,
Sure.
when you are acting on it, something is happening.
Yeah, for sure.
and it was, I think I needed to be showed that in that way where, wait, Rob, now let's back up and say that again, but this time you listen. I'm doing what I'm supposed to.
Yeah. It's nice to have the experience of like, it's going to get better. Like
Yeah.
I know this feeling, or I've seen other people have this feeling and they're still here and
Yeah.
it got better. Like to have that, to like, to
And
lean on.
that's where a lot of the
That's faith.
That's where a lot of the reservation stuff has sort of cleared itself out. I mean, I have one that I have to be consciously aware of.
What's that one?
Anything that in my behavior even remotely resembles participating in the abuse cycle.
That doesn't mean you're going to get loaded, though.
No, but it's put me in that place where I've thought about it. And it's
Abuse to yourself or abusing somebody else?
anything that is me taking on burden, whether from myself or people, places, and things, and then taking some of that burden and putting it on someone else.
Oh, got it.
The basic cycle of taking shit, giving it out. That, and it makes perfect fucking sense. Like
It
I
takes
can
you
feel
to
it, and I
a
can
dark
think it.
place.
Well,
Yeah, but
If-
when you say that, like, and you have all those emotions about it, and I'm listening to you, and in my heart, I'm like, okay, Rob. Well, then when that happens, when you hurt somebody, what do you do when you hurt
we make
somebody?
amends.
Okay, so and then the amends is
Yeah.
done, and then you move on.
So the reservation would be also coupled with the fear that if I would participate in this particular behavior to an extent that it causes enough harm, I might get loaded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
well,
sense.
it's because it takes me so low. It's because
I
it
understand.
triggers all of the self-abuse stuff.
Yeah.
In
well,
this.
hopefully that if you start going down that path, you recognize the path, and then you
Well, I end
There's
up in a
there's
lot
a
of
good amount of
meetings.
space in between
that
the trigger, the action, and the
use.
reservation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when desperation flips to despair, I think, for me. It's that change in perspective, and
Oh, like I knew this was gonna get me or whatever. I knew this was. I was never gonna break the cycle.
yeah, well, it's that little piece of the question in the first step in the step working guides is, am I plagued by the feeling that I should have known better? Fuck yes, a lot, and is that the reason to beat the fuck out of myself? And how much better have I gotten about that? Because that question is always going to come up for me. It just is. How I respond to it, how I feel about me at the time. I mean, this is where that staying busy with recovery, staying busy with the listening, learning, growing, and changing.
Yeah, as long as you're doing that, you're not self-deprecating. How do you say the word?
Deprecating.
Yeah.
Because
Put the bat down, Rob.
Yeah, I'm going to beat myself up.
Put the bat down, Rob.
Yeah, and how soon does that pop? When and that's where some of the language change has been. I had this horrible revelation of, like, how many times I referred to myself as an idiot in a day,
Yeah.
or a fucking idiot. You know, and that's an improvement from some of the ways I used to talk to myself, but it was still, okay, we'll be more polite about treating ourselves really poorly.
Yeah. I hate to say it, Rob, but we're all a work in progress.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So so that's the reservation.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about one of your biggest fears in early recovery. And then what does that look like now?
That I wouldn't get better. I mean, that,
Really?
yeah.
Like this wouldn't work?
Yeah.
Is it still there today?
Sometimes
Yeah.
and this is one I
the reservation thing and this, they kind of coincide a little bit with each
They
other.
do.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. And this is I've managed, trying to apply self-compassion to every aspect of me. That gets really hard, right? I'm tired of some of my bullshit and I don't want some of my bullshit.
Well, that's where humility comes
Yeah.
in. We practice humility. We look at that shit and go, hey,
Yeah.
I screwed up.
Yeah.
I'm going to try better.
Yeah. And
Try to be better.
if I'm not, my conscious contact with my higher power has to be constant contact. And when I forget that, it allows space for, wow, that was really bad, Rob.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have done that. Turns into, what the fuck were you thinking, Rob?
Do you have that practice today? That constant contact
Yeah.
practice?
Yeah. One way or another.
What does it look like? Meditation and prayer?
There's the sort of ritualistic routine kind of stuff.
Yeah.
With the full intent. And then there's now might be a good time to stop and take a breath. And that's definitely work in progress stuff. It's, I will, like anybody, go on a run where my regular practice is good and my recognizing where I'm at is pretty good. And so I can stop and pause. And then sometimes, it's just not what it should be.
Now you're putting expectations on. When you say should, there's an expectation. And that's the poison.
My sponsor hates that word.
Yeah,
Well, at least
me
when
too.
it comes out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, I don't blame your sponsor at all.
yeah, well, it is. And that's a what if, right? That's a woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah. So that's great language to change.
It sure is.
Yeah.
I should change that, shouldn't I?
Stop using that. You dork. All right. Resentment. What resentment did you carry for a very long time that you have overcome today? Like what was the first resentment coming in, or one of them?
I would say, what's the one that stands
big
out
one.
the most? What was the one that you're like, I'm glad I got over that one first? Like it stands out.
My parents.
I was going to say your dad.
Yeah.
Was the resentment towards mom and dad equal? Were they kind of coupled together, or was it independent of each other?
The answer to that is yes. It was all
All
about
of
it.
that,
It
yeah.
was a moving cloud of bullshit.
Yeah, I get it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I've come to recognize that the physical violence like that modifies itself, right? That sort of trauma is fixed by not experiencing that trauma. The mental and emotional abuse from, and neglect, it's like the things that I was deprived of, like fuck love and just being.
Protection,
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah, that's the stuff that fucks me up now. Like, it's that whole thing where somebody punched you in the face, and then at some point somebody punched you in the face and you thought you deserved it, and that as I began to recognize some things, the wholesale resentment towards my parents was just like, that's why I left recovery, was the thought of having to fucking,
Make amends to them.
yeah, and I
But
struggled.
now you
with-
know the truth.
yeah.
Like-
And my amends was heavy duty. My sponsor pulled a fucking trick on me, because it was something he'd had to do with some stuff. because I was writing it down. These weren't going to be, I don't want to see them ever again. I don't need to. And so how do I write these out? What's the living amends? What am I doing with this stuff? And I've got friends who've passed that I owed amends to, that I had to write it out and set an intention about living amends. And that worked. And it just wasn't happening with the amends for my parents.
Because of that resentment.
Because of the resentment, yeah. And I would fall into some role of an abuse cycle with it. It was either full on blaming them or full on blaming me. So
Yeah.
it couldn't be an apology and it couldn't be an attack.
I don't know if it's like clinically true or not, but at somewhere in therapy along the way for me, I was told that, like, I don't know the exact age. You might know, like, up until 10 or 11, I was not responsible for anything that ever happened.
Right.
And then there's a certain age, and I think it's different for every kid, that you start taking responsibility for your actions because you've had enough life lessons to know what's right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, developmentally, the part of the brain that assesses risk and reward is not fully developed until we're in our early 20s.
Oh, well,
so
there was some other part about like 12, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah. The cause and effect kind of stuff starts developing pre-puberty. And then you go through puberty, which fucks everything up.
Yeah, you're just a mess.
Yeah. So.
All right. So, did you have any like current resentments? Like being in recovery for some years,
Momentarily.
Oh, I like that.
Like they come and go.
Well, because that's something I've gotten a shit ton better about recognizing, is like, if I'm like, it's part of understanding that shame and blame is my cycle.
Yeah.
And if there's any blame going on, there's something else going on.
Rob made a motion, for those that couldn't see, that he put his arms out and he's like, that motherfucker. That's his gesture. That's what it said to me.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's like that, it's what's my part.
Yeah.
And
so you kind of like clean that up super quick.
As much as I can.
Yeah.
And it's important to identify for me what I did wrong. And not because part of like living in a trauma response for decades is that, I'm just fucked, is about as irresponsible, whatever the reasons. Because if I am totally fucked, I'm not working on anything. I'm not fixing any problem. I'm not solving. I'm not in solution even remotely. I am. It's an excuse in a way, it's
for more poor behavior.
Yeah. Or for me to just give up,
Right.
and,
but you don't live there anymore.
No.
Good. So I kind of missed out on the part of the fear thing is, and abuse and everything else that we've talked about, how it correlates into your relationship interactions. And we don't have to delve deep into that. Just kind of like give us some pointers on like, in my relationships, my fear keeps me from doing this.
I have a weird resentment thing that I just realized sitting here pondering that I want to talk about real quick.
Okay.
It took me a second to decide whether or not I wanted to talk about it just in the name of keeping the podcast going. But I started trying to like process resentments that I have. And lately, because I've been trying to do less,
Calming down.
pursuing less things.
Yeah.
What's been happening is I'm doing less, but it's making my brain do more because I'm in fear of missing out. And so what's happening is this is all in my head. All of it is in my head.
Of course it is.
Yeah. I get an idea and then I get an attachment to the idea and then I spend a bunch of energy on that idea and then if that idea doesn't come to fruition or it doesn't work out or it has to change, which I'm getting better at, like, okay, this isn't working, letting it go. But in the meantime, I get resentful that things aren't going the way that I want in my head. And it's literally all just exists in my head.
That's a death spiral.
It's fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
It's so like it, and it get like it's probably even worse than playing it out and trying to accomplish it, because there's no reward from it. It's all just like, if I do this and I think that, and then if I did this,
somehow we need to figure out how to wash Josh's brain.
wash it.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been washing it for fucking years, dude.
There's a lot of dirt in there that needs to get cleaned out.
Yep.
All right, back to Rob.
Thanks, guys.
I'm glad. Hey, it all works out.
Yeah.
The relationship, like a couple points about relationships.
It's the same as a lot of other stuff in life, but with more weight, more importance, more instant value or problem, is presence.
Presence.
Being present, because that's
Physically or mentally or emotionally?
yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's
I know that one.
well, so the big commodity in relationships of any sort, is like time and attention, right? What you're willing to give, what you want to receive. And if I'm living up here and I allow any of those threads of fear, start playing on self-worth, then, it's having a conversation in my head that, if I think that you think poorly of me, it starts a fucking cascade effect that is like, well, if you say you like me, then you're lying, and people eventually catch on that you're thinking about them in ways that aren't, and that's all my bullshit going, well, I've lived a life. Had a childhood where I couldn't be me and I wasn't going to be loved. And now I'm swimming, ass deep in this place of people just want me to be me and love me. So acclimating to that has been really hard.
I get it. So, and all of that lives in your head.
Yeah.
And so, even now, Josh will ask a sponsee, like, what's the worst neighborhood you've ever hung out in?
Yeah.
I shared that at a meeting last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, an addict by himself is an addict in bad company, and the worst neighborhood I could be in is my head.
Yeah, it's like the good real estate and the upstairs neighbors are fucking horrible.
Oh, that's good. I haven't heard that. I like that.
It is good, huh?
And it's
there's
hard.
good real estate down here. Let's stay in this area.
Yeah.
They have their hand on their chest over their heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they say there's good real estate in the heart.
Yeah. It's
And you're
hard to recognize.
Neighbors.
Yeah. And like
Talk about crank. Right? The upstairs neighbors are fucking doing some bathtub crank right now.
Yeah. And trying to build things that they're not capable of building.
Or dismantling stereos.
Yeah. And stripping out the wiring.
Wait, tweaker.
Yeah.
Don't look at me like that, Josh.
But yeah, like
tweaker shit.
I never did any of that, dude.
Trying to relate. I mean, and that's like any relationship.
In relationships?
Yeah. That's the hard part, right?
I don't know if that's the hard part.
For me.
Yeah. I was going to just point out that when we're authentic in a relationship, there's just being you.
Yeah.
Not trying.
And it's automatic, and it's me who gets in the way.
Yeah.
That's the thing I struggle with the most. Yeah. I'm the same. I am the same literally everywhere. Like there's nowhere with people where I'm like, I shouldn't be off. I shouldn't be 100%. It's a fault and a fucking bonus. Like I just exist that way.
Yeah.
I don't feel it's a fault.
Well, because I can be like obnoxious and vulgar, and there are certain times where I should probably tone it back out of respect. but like sometimes I just don't do that. You know, I don't. And so like
You haven't got to that point yet.
I could do better there.
Yeah.
I could do better there.
Sure.
But like, if I'm like not right with myself, like I don't want to be around anybody.
Right.
And I'll start building cases against people that have nothing to do with whatever I'm struggling with.
Right. Yeah.
And you're in your head.
Yeah, well,
for sure.
So, and some of it is the weird process of emotional maturity. You know, it's my problems with me make me immature with you. Is really how it works. Like, you know, like Kevin, you're so much better when I am working my program. And, you know what I mean? It's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which
Twisted.
Yeah, and it's all about bullshit, you know. But it is that it's, you know, me having to realize that, you know, I'm a big proponent of figuring out how I sit with my feelings and not in them. And it's only been recently that I realized I had to do that with all of my positive emotions.
Good.
Because they run amok too, you know, and because they're good, I chase them like I would a fucking high. And
You grab them.
yeah, and that's not present. If I'm like, oh, because I want to hold on to that. And if any, you know, reverting back to childhood bullshit is like anything good I need to hold on to.
Yeah, that's like a spiritual relapse.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And it leads me to my styles of manipulation.
It's so interesting how like the human body is so intricate. The mind, the spirit, the fucking like mental, emotional, just well-being. They're all so intricately interconnected and so
Yeah.
it's so delicate.
Yeah.
It's so delicate and so robust at the same time. It's like this weird, like
We're just weird. That's all.
yeah, human
All right.
just life.
I have a question. And
I bet you if we took some acid, it would all make sense.
stop it. Stop it. A consequence that you are living with today that you had from your past. A lot of people will say like the felonies on my record.
Hep C.
Or Hep C, yeah.
Divorce.
That was another one.
You know, some of my physical health,
Yeah. Me too.
you know, just letting stuff slide for too long. You know, and that'll plague me sometimes, you know. It's
Yeah.
I'm like you know, cuz anything is an invitation for me to start to pick up the bat again. And
So what was the consequence is like your physical health because you didn't take care of your body?
yeah. You know, cuz I didn't view me as worth taking care of.
Okay.
You know, and some invincibility stuff. And,
I've heard that before from other people that we've interviewed is
Yeah.
like
yeah, it seems so small, and we're in a culture that, you know, especially for us boys, where we muscle through it. We don't need to go and do the doctor or therapy.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And then it's reinforced by self-worth that isn't adequate. You know, but also we didn't go to the doctor a lot. I didn't get to go to the doctor a lot when I was a kid because there would be too much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know,
didn't start slowing down, and I just didn't take the time to realize how much damage I was causing my body.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, and mentally too. Just mental fatigue. Like I'm just fucking tired, dude.
Yeah.
I'm just tired all the time. I'm tired.
Yeah. All right, next questions. How are you showing your gratitude for your recovery?
I don't use. I mean, that's
Number one.
honestly,
No, that's big.
so.
I laugh because I think a lot of people, myself included, would just kind of
Pass on by
blow
that.
right over that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. My sponsor, he's adamant about that part of it, and you know, and it does feel trivial sometimes. Oh, well, are you clean? Well, yes, I am, but I'm suffering today. But are you clean?
Yeah.
You know, and that I didn't think I ever would. you know, I didn't, and I walked in here with some doubts about whether this was going to work.
So you're grateful for staying clean.
Yeah. Well, and that's how I practice gratitude too, is by staying clean. It's a real deal thing.
Other things you're grateful for?
I'm grateful that my son at almost 21 is nothing. He's not where I was by any means at that time. And when I did my amends to him, I was like, who the fuck are you? Like, he talked, I explained a lot more about my childhood and some of the stuff that came with that, in context to, a history of poor parenting, for him. And he said things like, sometimes I think those things about myself, but then I remind myself it's all in my mind and I can let it go. I was like, what?
Where did he learn that from, though?
Oh, that's a hard one to find acceptance for.
You don't take any, you don't take any part in that?
I absolutely do.
You modeled that for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you grateful for that?
Yeah.
That you
That's
got to help your son break the cycle?
Yeah. And so gratitude is a practice. It's not a state.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get out of. And
other people have opinions about that.
And they can have those.
Yeah. I'm just saying,
Yeah. Practicing an attitude of gratitude. Well, there's some shit out there that doesn't warrant gratitude. It's there's a positivity police problem.
Perspective is everything.
Yeah. That's like saying, I'm going to find gratitude. Like, oh, your son has cancer and he's going to die. Well, look on the bright side.
I'm so grateful I have time with him now.
Yeah. That's the real thing.
I get it.
But the spinning things would be to say, well, just think about all the money you're going to save not sending him to college.
That's just demented.
No, that's from that's from the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Yeah. And that's some gratitude comes after the fact, because we're busy living through bad shit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit there and go, I'm so grateful for how I feel right now. Sometimes that happens because sometimes I don't fall into a hole because I realize that this pain means I'm alive.
No, I hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But on the backside of things, it's then like, okay, I made it through that clean. I didn't lose my fucking mind. Finding the positive is simply not going all the way negative sometimes for me.
And you're grateful for that.
Oh, fucking A.
Cool. All right, here's a really good one. What assets do you have that helps you be of service to others? What are some of your service assets?
I'm really, I'm empathic as fuck. I feel people. And when I'm present and when I've taken care of me as I'm supposed to, I can reach people, and I can do it on a dime. And
so that would be like in other terms, when you're spiritually fit.
Yes.
I get you.
Yeah. It's the big deal thing was something, when I would catch somebody and realize you are so awesome and you don't know it, newcomers and whatnot. And just being like, you know what, you are such a big deal. Like that, like when I see it, I say it kind of thing. And
I believe in that very much. Like when you see it, if it's on my heart, like I notice something that's a compliment to somebody, like, hey, you look really good today. Or like I really appreciate your honesty, or like, just like sharing any kind of positive reinforcing thing. Like if you see it or you feel it, you say it. Like I try to do that too.
Yeah. Well, I know most of what I hear in my head is not those niceties. Right. And I'm acutely aware that we all.
Do you have any of those nice things in your head?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Um,
I was going to say after some, for me, after a after many years of practice, like, very little of that stuff in my head is like negative and that asshole or whatever.
yeah.
Most of it's like, like we were out to dinner after the meeting last night, and there's like 12 of us at a table, and I'm like looking at everybody at the table, and I'm like, everybody here is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
They're all amazing people
Yeah.
in their own way.
Yeah. That sort of sense of belonging
Yeah.
is
I like that.
really helpful, and I'm still at the stage where I catch things and then go, okay, stop. And things are only now becoming automatic in some ways, where my first response is nice, because it doesn't have to be about me for me to be a part of it,
Yeah.
and that's,
I totally get that.
and that's part of that checklist for me. Part of my inauthenticity, part of my manipulation is trying to prevent the worst thing from happening. And I have a zero track record with that. When I get locked in on that, and that is ancient behavior.
We've done work on that
Yeah.
about projecting things that haven't happened.
Yeah.
And what do you call it? When an outcome, you attach to an outcome that you want to happen or you believe is going to happen. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I can start building my entire life around something that doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like
You've done that.
yeah, and there's something to be said about it too, because like having that kind of thought, like being wired that way, I've built my life utilizing that.
Yeah.
And so but what I do with it sometimes is not okay. Like it's unhealthy. Like my relationship with that part of my brain isn't like, it reaches a certain point where it becomes more fear than foresight. And then it starts to become more damaging and unproductive than planning.
Yeah.
Like it can turn the corner really quick.
Well, and it's some of those things are like, we take some of the way we have perspective on the people around us and try to fit it to our perception of ourselves. And while it's great for other people, how we look at other people, some of, like
the way that we perceive somebody else doing the thing that we're looking at is way different than how they perceive what they're doing with themselves.
Well, that, and when we try to apply that view of ourselves, it doesn't work the same way.
Interesting.
I'm much kinder to other people than I am to me.
True.
For instance,
I relate to that.
Well, I think it's the difference is like the hope would be that we're watching somebody else do something and when we perceive it in a way that we try to apply to ourselves, but the hopeful scenario is that the reason that they're doing that thing that's attractive to us is because they want to do it for themselves. When we see it and try to do it, we're not trying to do it for ourselves most of the time. It's an
outward.
Yeah. And so the relationship with it,
Yeah.
it tweaks the perception of
Both
it.
you guys are so fucking deep, man.
Well, one of the things I've learned,
I'm simple over here. I'm like, I like you and I like you. And that's that.
Social media is a motherfucker.
Yeah.
I've literally deleted. I have no social media, and YouTube is blocked on my phone.
Yeah.
So I have all of my shit's
Probably
gone.
safe.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's so
definitely.
My quality of life is better. I don't handle it well.
Well, I mean, part of the process, just being alive, is that, humans being human beings is what happens, and we forget that with, like, social media is a way to forget that these are other human beings because there's something on a screen. There's some sort of transference of importance that isn't appropriate just because it's on, just because I can watch it. I can load a fucking video all day, every day.
Okay, Rob. So on that point, one of my, I feel that one of my saving graces is there's parts of our readings that we read and it states a productive member of that society.
Yes.
And it says that society.
Yeah.
That society, I get to choose what society I belong to.
Right.
And I belong to Recovery Society.
Yeah.
And that's where I spend most of my life.
Yeah.
Is in Recovery Society.
You said something that I think would make a good shirt. Human being, human being.
Humans
being human beings.
Yeah, humans being human beings.
You repeated something I said.
Human being, human being. Like if my shirt said human being, human being. Like I'm just a human being, a human being.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that.
And
Somebody's going to listen to this and then steal that idea.
probably,
I'll buy a shirt.
do that.
I'll make it. I'll put it on my. It'll be my next.
Project.
Yeah.
One of the things with a lot of this stuff that I've realized, and this is that part about trying to get out of your head, trying to live through your heart. There's a lot of stuff, and especially with
That's called a 2
relationships.
foot drop.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of Josh.
9 to 14 inches. Even you don't have 2
You
feet.
intellectual motherfuckers will not put the ruler down.
I won't.
It's just a saying.
A 14-inch drop. That's fine. I like it. 2 foot sounds good, but 14 inches, if that's literal,
You
then
guys.
Yeah. And what about our height challenge friends?
Shut
They've
up.
only got like 6 inches between. Anyway.
Yeah, what are you
you
going
don't
to
think
say?
this is, you don't think this is 2 feet
No.
from top to no?
From the very top?
Somebody
Here
that made
to
up the
here.
statement was a really tall guy,
Yes.
Yeah.
and it was 2 feet for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so
They
let's
were a
get over
basketball
that.
player and
I'm going to cut you off, Rob.
yeah,
Whoever said it had a long neck.
very it's a giraffe-like state of being.
Moving on.
One of the things I have to work around with me is that like my blown up existence as a child. I went on to try and I would see like my friends' families who were functional or normal or didn't have all the bullshit and that kind of stuff. And all I could do is intellectualize that. And I've spent a lot of my life trying to take that tangible model and then live it, so it's a feeling thing that I'm trying to think myself through, which isn't a fucking foreign concept in recovery at all. I'm not, but I have to be like, I catch myself sometimes going, I've done this and I've seen it work for other people, and it's like, well, love and caring and respect aren't thought processes at the core, right? It's you have to do some thinking to make them happen, but you also have to feel them for them to be happening, and I've spent a lot of my time, as far as projecting things and having conversations in my head that were about, okay, on paper, this is how this works.
God, I hate you guys.
But in practice,
It's a strong word, Kevin.
It is. I take it back. I didn't mean that. That was a little bit of sarcasm.
So I'm still, one of the things that I'm acutely aware of and still trying to figure out, how do I process this? What is the process? Is that feeling portion of it? Because
you can't just not try to figure it out and just let it be.
that's
it
the
that hard?
that's the foreign part.
Okay. So practice that.
Yeah. And that's easier to do with me than it is with all the rest of you. Once you people are in the mix,
That's so true. I agree with you. That's hard.
and I've walked, from one situation to another where I'm like, okay, I'm set. I feel good. And somebody might think something about me. Somebody might not even be thinking about me at all, but here we go.
Yeah. That happened to me. One of the very first or second meetings that we walked into Journey Within.
Yeah.
And it's a meditation meeting, and it's very spiritual to me. And we're talking about like connecting with our hearts and our higher power. And I walk into the meeting just excited to be connected, right, to this spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
And I put my keys down on the couch and I go to the bathroom and I come back and this guy has moved my keys like somewhere and is sitting in my seat. And I'm like, hey, did you see my keys here? And he goes, yeah, your keys are over there now. Or something along those lines. It's been some years. And I'm like, that destroyed the meeting for me.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't get out of my head.
Yeah. Well, nobody has to move my keys. I might just have to think you might move my keys, because
All right.
I'm manipulating to prevent bad things from happening.
Yeah. All right. So here's the part where we're going to ask you for a story. And no, I don't want that feather. It's it could be.
I would like to hear a story about a crazy using event. We skipped over a large chunk of time from 19 to 48.
Yeah.
If it's possible, I'd like to hear some kind of interesting, I was spun out and did this, or something that stands out. Like what's like a holy shit, that was a fucking crazy trip.
Oh,
if you're willing to share it.
yeah. Dude,
Just don't implicate anybody in a
no.
crime.
We used to do a lot of meth and make pipe bombs.
Was it meth or crank?
Sometimes it was both. We like to mix
I
it.
never had meth.
That's a little more pure. It's not as dirty.
I guess I'm just dirty.
Yeah. Well, also, you've been clean for a really long time, so.
So pipe bombs?
Yeah, we used to be loaded as fuck, and we'd be reloading ammunition for the guns and creating explosives to entertain ourselves. And I don't know how we never blew ourselves up.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, but I took one of those old half-gallon glass mayonnaise jars, and because also I learned tricks from my dad because he was counterinsurgency, and
Wow.
oh yeah, and I had the anarchist cookbook, all that stuff. It was fun.
You had that?
Yeah, I tamped and packed.
Do you know what? I'm sorry, Rob.
Yes.
You know what that is?
I am very familiar with it. Yeah.
You have a copy?
No, I do not.
No, you do not.
And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
Yeah. But I made this bomb and we put it in the culvert across the street from the house.
Theoretically, you did this.
Theoretically. And, had like 8 inches of cannon fuse, which was enough to run the fuck away. And it exploded and it rattled all the windows.
In the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. And it cracked the culvert and it had this rolling mushroom cloud of smoke.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Like cops and fire department were there.
Are you kidding?
Oh, yeah. And we got to play stupid and did not get busted for it.
Holy cow.
What did you guys say it was?
We didn't. We
So
were
weird,
trying
man.
to figure it out too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. We blew up a lot of things.
I can picture like Will Ferrell being there, like blowing that thing up, and he's like, "What was that?"
We're going streaking.
Yeah, right. I don't know who lit that off.
It was like a Kiss concert pyro on steroids. It was insane.
Just the fact that how old were you when you're making pipe bombs?
That was like early 20s.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. We would go and grab old washing machines and dryers and take them out to the desert and blow them up and shoot them. And
Yeah, I've done that.
yeah.
I saw a video of these guys were shooting a refrigerator that they had filled up completely with tannerite.
Jesus.
And it was like,
Holy cow.
I don't know, probably like, I would say 150 yards, 200 yards away. So it was way out there. And the door was facing the guys with the camera and they were behind a tree and they shot it and everybody was like, oh, and like stepped out from behind the tree and it was all crazy.
And the door
all of a
came
sudden the
in.
door comes and it just like this much misses the guy in the tree, like fly. It would have just decapitated. Yeah, it would have decapitated him. It was nuts.
People doing dumb things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Well, this is a good episode.
Right on, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, man. Thanks for doing this. It was
thank
good
you
to
for
get to know
having
you a little
me.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for
how do
sharing
you
all that
feel?
stuff.
I feel good.
It didn't seem like you had too much. That's why I asked earlier, like, was some of the nervousness about just visiting that stuff inside yourself instead of, because it didn't seem like you struggled to share. It just maybe like to go there.
It's weird to tell like the story with this much of it filled in, right?
Sure.
Like, when you chair a meeting, it's 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, even if you're a speaker, you're 30 to 40 minutes.
4-step podcast, dude.
Yeah. So
We're doing the whole thing.
so there's stuff in here that I've shared before, but
Not all together.
I hear
you.
and it's
It's a lot. Even for, I was just talking to Sadie when we were on break. I'm like, dude, doing these things is like more taxing than I like take time to recognize. Cause like it's literally, it's an emotional investment. Like
Especially this one. I was thinking earlier during break, like this one's going to be, labeled trauma therapy.
Yeah.
Cause, so many of us in the rooms don't recognize that we need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So just us sharing and talking about it
Well,
opens the door.
It was a pretty pivotal decision.
Change.
Yeah. I mean, it made it, and I could benefit from more still.
I am going for more.
It's on par with as a life saving decision as getting clean is.
Sure, yeah.
For me, going back to trauma therapy was all that earnestly and honestly trying to work steps and be in recovery did was unbury some bullshit that the steps were only,
What's cool about the recovery process in regards to getting to a place where like you may be open, or I became open to do trauma therapy, is like the work that I did in Narcotics Anonymous made me available for the work I needed to do in trauma therapy. Like I can see a very clear correlation between like I needed to be in the place that I was in order to get through that trauma therapy with the level of success.
I
that it
understand.
created
Like
for me.
you would say if you didn't have recovery, you probably wouldn't have been able to do trauma therapy.
Right. Not successfully, I don't think.
Yeah. I
Well,
agree.
and-
As honesty.
the next part of that is that the trauma therapy will allow your recovery to grow more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And like I've been surprised. That's where like
Compounding effect.
some of I'm in new territory at 57 and I have a high level of self-awareness, and yet I'm like, the problem here is I've never experienced this either not high or without some sort of resent or prejudice or being closed off from my feelings. Like I'm feeling some things, even though I've been through them dozens of times. Like I'm trying to be present. That's new, and that's a bitch.
That's heavy. All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Rob, thank you very much for coming out. I love you.
Love me too.
Yeah. Thanks again, man. Thanks everybody for listening. Love you guys.
Peace.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Often you will hear addicts referring to a specific 12-step program or rehab. These are personal stories. We do not represent any of the programs.